My first vision for the Hermitage came to me way back in the very early 70s, when I used to read the Earth Garden magazine for relaxation and delight on our wide, shady veranda. We had at that time 5 acres of land on the outskirts of Gympie in subtropical southeast Queensland, Australia, and we started growing our own vegetables and fruit. Later we added butter, milk and cheese and baked our own bread, and the manure from our cow was added to the compost. Soon I was led to another avenue of inspiration. I came across a book called The Secret Life of Plants, where there was a chapter about a place in the north of Scotland called Findhorn. Not very long afterwards I found a magical book. Yes, The Magic of Findhorn, and I eagerly read it from cover to cover. At Findhorn they apparently grew 40-pound cabbages and 8-foot delphiniums in pure sand, and what's more, the garden where they grew them was buffeted by the winds that came straight off the North Sea. It was said that this abundant garden came into existence all because they talked to God, the angelic realms, the devas and nature spirits. Apparently, in the greater scheme of things, it is to these normally unseen beings that is given the work of creating the essential blueprint of all manifestation, which then becomes an ordered descent into matter. Man then has the further role to materialize what is essentially spirit on earth, no matter whether it was a tree, a bird, a house or a machine. All have their own inherent blueprint as a divine seed. It was believed at Findhorn that many of the problems obvious on earth were because humankind had become, in a completely single-minded and selfish way, more and more powerful, and had come to leave out of all creativity this essential cooperation. It was this very fact, it was said, that had led us to become more and more linear in our thinking. The people at Findhorn were informed by God that the essential linking between all the parts naturally occurred on these unseen levels that we were now ignoring and indeed totally casting aside. No wonder we had problems. All religions, I knew, talk about God as love, and this new way of bringing this into deeper and more resonant focus for me was a revelation. It sounded so right that I simply wanted to jump for joy. I wanted to begin working in this way immediately and set about finding the perfect piece of land to bring my dreams into reality. The opportunity to buy the actual land came almost immediately, but we felt in meditation that it was necessary to come and sit for hours, feeling into the energy, and to allow the breezes to whisper their secrets into our ears. Luckily, no one had lived here for 15 years, so we were able to take our time. Finally, we took the plunge into a new life, sold the house in town, and moved to this completely hidden valley tucked into what is now National Park. It was clear that it was all meant to be, but we came to realize that there was a very long road ahead of us and that we would need help. I also knew that I had very little real knowledge of the concepts behind this new reality of mine, apart from a useful background in farming, and I therefore needed to embark on a deep and intense spiritual training. I read everything I could get my hands on, in between planting trees, and more trees, and growing food for ourselves, and spent many hours in deep meditation. I joined a study group who also seemed to be embarking on this same journey. I followed my new nose wherever it led me, and to whoever it seemed to lead me to. Gradually I found that every night I would wake, and if I was quick enough, I would catch a new revelation for the next step ahead. This was a continuation of a habit that I started in childhood, when I used to write letters to the fairies. In those days I would innocently tell my mother about my imaginary literary adventures, and she would write back on tiny pages, in tiny writing, and pop the letters under my pillow, wrapped in the petals of flowers and tied with black cotton thread. This habit of talking to fairies, to me, seemed a perfectly natural thing to do, child as I was, conceived in the Himalayas on a visit to the Valley of the Flowers. And I had continued this deep introspection all my life. Little did I realize then that it was to my own inner self to whom I was writing, and these letters and the answers were providing me with a deeper and deeper revelation of each next direction and aspect of universal truth. I started to have amazing dreams. One night I was barely asleep, and I had 3 very clear dreams in quick succession. The first was a vision of the Hermitage, with what seemed like a light-filled etheric triangle poised above its boundaries and spreading ever outwards like ripples in a pond. Then came a vision of me sitting on a hard, upright, carved wooden chair and having my hair cut by 2 elderly women. I realized that they were not cutting my hair, but deliberately making me completely bald, with macabre enjoyment. I realized also that they were cutting my power. Swiftly, I could see in the dream the source of this evil, and I was told to detach myself from it. The third and final vision was of me arriving at a railway station a long, long way away, and being met by a car driven by the Christ, who then drove me to Findhorn. This was of course not the Jesus of the churches and my childhood, but the cosmic Christ of all esoteric teaching. And from then on it became obvious what I was to do, and I waited for things to happen. I continued to work on the land, withdrew even more into my own study and meditation, and waited for the money to come for my trip to Findhorn, which it did in a matter of weeks.